There comes a moment in life when the world stops listening to your efforts. You try to fix it, shape it, scream at it, beg it, and nothing changes. You give everything you have, and still the doors don't open, the people don't come back. The job doesn't work out. The pain doesn't stop. You're stuck. It feels like life itself has turned its back on you. Have you ever been there? It's the moment where control slips out of your hands. You can't change what happened. You can't undo what broke. You can't force someone to understand, to stay, or to heal faster than they're ready. You're left standing in a storm, and the storm just keeps going. And in that moment, something terrifying happens. The outside world doesn't change, so the only thing left is you. This is where most people break. But it's also where the strongest people in history were born. Not because they had some secret advantage, but because they asked themselves one question. If I can't change the world, can I change myself? That question is the heart of today's video. And it comes from a man who lost everything. His family, his freedom, his dignity, and still discovered something more powerful than pain. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, gave us a quote that cuts through the noise of our suffering. He said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Let that sink in. This isn't a quote for comfort. This is a quote for transformation. In the next few minutes, I'm going to take you deep into the meaning behind those words. You'll hear stories from Frankl's life that will shift how you look at your own struggles. You'll explore ancient philosophical ideas that can save your mind in the middle of chaos. And you'll discover how the worst thing that ever happened to you could become the thing that frees you, if you're willing to look inward. This video is not for passive watching. It's for people who are done waiting, people who are tired of begging life to change. It's for you, if you're ready to grow from the inside out. So stay with me until the end, because the shift you've been looking for, it doesn't begin out there. It begins in here. Let's begin. So what does this quote really mean? When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. At first, it might sound like giving up, like letting life win. But that's not what Frankl meant. He wasn't talking about surrendering to defeat. He was talking about discovering a new kind of power, a power that doesn't depend on the outside world cooperating. Think about it. You wake up every day with plans, with expectations, with hope. You move through life assuming that your efforts will produce results. That if you try hard enough, things will eventually go your way. But what happens when they don't? What happens when no amount of trying is enough? That's when life asks you a harder question. Who are you when nothing is going your way? This quote is an invitation to stop fighting the things you cannot change and start changing the one thing that's still within your control, your inner world. This is where the ancient Stoics were way ahead of us. Epictetus, a philosopher who was once a slave, said something strikingly similar. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He couldn't control his chains, but he could control his character. He could control how he thought, how he felt, what he believed. He discovered the same truth Frankl did centuries later. Even in a prison, the mind can remain free. When we resist what is, we suffer. But when we accept it, not as approval, but as reality, something strange happens. We stop drowning. We start adapting. We begin to transform. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche had a concept called amor fati, the love of fate. He believed that the highest strength wasn't in fighting destiny, but in embracing it fully, not just accepting what happens, but loving it, even the pain, even the loss, even the betrayal. Why? Because in loving what is, you take back your power. You become an active participant in your story again, even if you can't control the plot. And that's what Frankl was really saying. There will be moments in life, painful, brutal moments, where change is impossible, where no solution exists, where no door will open. And in those moments, you are left with a choice. You can let the situation break you, or you can let it build you into someone new. This is not about weakness. It's about evolution. Frankl himself went through unthinkable suffering. He didn't say these words from a place of privilege or comfort. He wrote them from a place most of us can't even imagine. Stripped of everything, treated like nothing, surrounded by death, and still, he found meaning. Still, he found power inside himself. Power that no guard, no system, no suffering could take away. So the quote isn't telling you to give up. It's telling you to wake up, to stop depending on life to be fair or easy or logical. It's saying that when you've lost control of the outside world, the real journey begins inside. It's hard, but it's freeing. The modern world teaches us that success is about fixing things. Fix your job. Fix your body. Fix your bank account. Fix your relationship. But Viktor Frankl turns that upside down. He tells us that sometimes the thing that needs fixing is you. Not because you're broken, but because you've outgrown your old way of thinking. Because life is trying to break through the shell of who you were, to reveal who you could be. We think we need to wait for the situation to change so we can feel better. But Frankl is telling us the opposite. Change yourself and then see what happens. So now I ask you, what's the situation in your life that refuses to change? And who could you become if you stopped fighting it and started growing through it? Because this is where the real journey begins. To truly understand why Viktor Frankl's words carry so much weight, you need to know where they came from. Viktor Frankl wasn't just a man who studied suffering. He lived it. Before the war, he was a brilliant young psychiatrist in Vienna. He was already studying how meaning could help people survive depression, addiction, and even suicidal thoughts. But then the Nazis invaded. Everything changed. He was taken to a concentration camp. First to Theresienstadt, then to Auschwitz, later to Dachau. His wife, his parents, his brother, they were all murdered. He was stripped of everything, his name, his career, his freedom. Even the manuscript of his life's work was taken from him on the first day. Can you imagine that? Everything you love, everyone you care about, gone. Your life's purpose, burned. And every day you wake up not knowing if this will be the day you're dragged out, humiliated, tortured, killed. That was his reality, day after day, year after year. So when Frankl says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves, he's not speaking from theory. He's speaking from the ashes of everything he once knew. And yet, somehow, he didn't go numb. He didn't lose himself. He didn't become bitter. Instead, he started watching, observing, asking questions. Why did some people give up while others held on, even with nothing left? What made the difference? That question became the seed of something incredible, something the world now knows as logotherapy. While inside the camps, Frankl realized that the people who survived the longest weren't always the strongest or the smartest or the healthiest. They were the ones who still had something to live for, a reason, a meaning. One man might hold on because he dreamed of seeing his daughter again, another because he was writing a book in his head, another because he believed with all his soul that he must not let this evil change who he was, that he had to stay human even in a place designed to destroy humanity. Frankl wrote that we can find meaning in 3 ways. First, through creating something, our work, our art, our contribution. Second, through experiencing something like love, beauty, nature, or deep connection. And third, through suffering, when we face pain with courage, dignity, and inner strength. Yes, even suffering can carry meaning. Frankl said that when suffering is unavoidable, the way we respond to it becomes the meaning. That doesn't make the pain good, but it does make it bearable. It gives it a why, and that why, he believed, could carry you through almost any how. In the camp, Frankl clung to that belief. Every day he watched men beaten and broken. But he also watched moments of incredible kindness. A man giving up his last piece of bread. Another comforting someone who had lost everything. Even in hell, there were sparks of light, and that's what kept him going. He decided that he had to survive, not just to escape, but to teach the world what he had learned, that even in the worst circumstances imaginable, you could still choose your attitude. You could still find meaning. And if you could find meaning, you could survive. When he was finally freed, Frankl didn't run from his pain. He ran toward his purpose. In just 9 days, he wrote the book that would change millions of lives, Man's Search for Meaning. It sold over 16 million copies and is considered one of the most important books of the 20th century. But it wasn't just a book. It was a message to the world. You are not powerless. You are not broken. No matter how dark your life becomes, there is still a light inside you. A light that no prison, no failure, no heartbreak, and no tragedy can take away. Frankl's story proves something incredible. When life strips you of everything you thought you needed, sometimes that's when you finally discover who you really are. And maybe that's what your pain is trying to do too. Maybe it's not here to punish you. Maybe it's here to wake you up. Let's talk about the moment when control disappears. You probably felt it, that sinking feeling when nothing is going according to plan. When you've done everything right, followed the rules, showed up, worked hard, loved deeply, and still life turns its back on you. The relationship ends. The business fails. The doctor gives you news that changes everything. Or maybe it's smaller than that, but it still cuts just as deep. You wake up one morning, look in the mirror, and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore. That moment, when it feels like life has slipped through your fingers, is terrifying. We are trained to believe we are in control, that we can manage, fix, organize, and shape everything around us if we just try hard enough. But sooner or later, life humbles us. It reminds us that control is often an illusion, and when that illusion shatters, most people panic. They either shut down or start pushing harder. They think if they just try more, scream louder, move faster, things will snap back into place. But the truth is, sometimes there's nothing left to fix. Sometimes the door has closed, the chapter has ended, the season is over. And no matter what you do, You can't force it to come back. So what do you do then? This is where everything changes. Because when you can't change what's outside, you have one choice left. You can change what's inside. And this kind of change, this kind of growth, is far more powerful than anything the outside world could ever give you. Psychologists call it psychological flexibility. It's the ability to adapt your mindset when life doesn't follow your script. It means being able to let go of what you thought should happen and instead ask, what can I do with what I've been given? It's not about giving up. It's about waking up to a new path. Carl Jung once said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. That's not just a clever quote. It's a survival tool. Because if you let your circumstances define you, you'll always be a victim. But if you decide to respond instead of react, you take back your power. You might not be able to change the storm around you, but you can become the kind of person who knows how to walk through storms. I want to tell you a short story. There was a woman who lost her husband suddenly. One day they were planning their future. The next day, he was gone. The pain was unbearable. She tried to stay strong for her kids, but inside, she was falling apart. No amount of therapy, books, or advice made the grief disappear. But then one night, she stopped trying to escape the pain. She sat with it. She looked it in the eye, and she asked herself a simple question. If this pain is here to stay, who do I need to become in order to live with it? That question didn't bring her husband back, but it brought her back. She slowly started writing again, not to escape the grief, but to give it a voice, to give it meaning. And today, she helps thousands of people walk through their own grief, not because she's healed, but because she's transforming. That's what Frankl meant. The outside world doesn't always change, but you can. And sometimes the greatest version of you is born the moment you stop running and start becoming. So if you feel like you're losing control, maybe you're not breaking. Maybe you're breaking open. And maybe what's waiting on the other side of that loss is someone you never knew you could become. There is a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't show up in muscles or achievements. It doesn't come from winning arguments or conquering challenges. This strength is quieter, deeper, and more unshakable than anything the outside world can give you. It's the strength of inner change. We spend most of our lives trying to change the external, our jobs, our relationships, our bank accounts, our bodies, our environment. But Viktor Frankl flipped that entire model upside down. He showed us that the real transformation happens within. The outside world is temporary. It's unpredictable. But your inner world, your beliefs, your thoughts, your values, your decisions, that's the one domain that belongs entirely to you. When you start working on that, everything else begins to shift. The Buddhists have been teaching this for thousands of years. They talk about impermanence, the idea that everything in life is constantly changing, whether you want it to or not. That pain, pleasure, success, failure, they all pass like clouds across the sky, and trying to hold on to them, trying to make anything permanent, only creates suffering. But when you let go, when you stop clinging and start adapting, you become free. You stop living like a prisoner of what should have been and start living in what is. Lao Tzu once said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." There's so much power in those words because when we're hit with something we didn't expect, when life doesn't go our way, we think we're losing something. We think we're being erased. But maybe we're being rewritten. Maybe the loss isn't here to destroy you. Maybe it's here to empty out the old version of you, so the real one can finally emerge. And yes, it's painful. Real inner change often begins in discomfort. It begins when the stories you used to tell yourself start falling apart. When the beliefs you built your life on no longer make sense. When the identity you wore like a shield suddenly feels too small, too heavy, too fake. The ego hates this process. The ego wants to stay in control. It wants to be right. It wants to be comfortable. But growth isn't comfortable. Growth is messy. It breaks you open in places you didn't even know existed. But that's exactly where the gold is. Letting go of your old self is not a death. It's a birth. You're not losing who you are. You're shedding who you are not. And in that space, something new begins to take shape. You start forgiving people you swore you'd never forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You start letting go of expectations, not because you're settling, but because you're making space for reality. You start speaking up, not to impress others, but to honor your truth. This is what inner power looks like. And it's not just personal, it's universal. All the great spiritual traditions, all the great thinkers, they point to the same truth. That the key to life isn't control, it's transformation. The ability to adapt, to grow, to evolve when life demands it, to rise when everything else falls. Frankl saw this in the camps. Some of the most powerful people he ever met were the ones who had nothing, no status, no possessions, no future, but still carried themselves with dignity, with compassion, with courage. That's real power. Not control over the world, but command over your soul. So if you feel like life is shaking everything loose right now, if nothing makes sense and everything feels like it's falling apart, maybe it's not falling apart. Maybe it's falling into place, but not the place you imagined, the place you were always meant to reach. And the only way to get there is to change. Not the world, not your past, you. That's the strength Frankl discovered. That's the strength that no one can give you and no one can take away. There comes a time after the fall, after the heartbreak, after the breakdown. A strange silence follows the storm. You're not who you used to be, but you're not yet who you're going to become. You're standing in between versions of yourself, and it can feel like you're lost. But you're not lost. You're in the process of rebuilding. After pain, identity gets shaken. The roles we played, the stories we told, the names we answered to, they don't fit anymore. That's the terrifying gift of suffering. It strips away the noise. It forces you to confront the question most people avoid their whole lives. Who am I now? Not who you were when everything was going well. Not who you pretended to be when you were trying to impress or survive. But who you are when there's nothing left to hide behind. This moment is sacred. It's the beginning of real identity, not the identity shaped by society or fear or survival, but the identity that's forged in fire. Nietzsche once said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos, the confusion, the grief, the uncertainty, isn't a sign that something's gone wrong. It's a sign that something powerful is being born inside you. You're not being destroyed. You're being refined. This is where post-traumatic growth begins. It's the opposite of giving up. It's what happens when you let your pain speak, and instead of silencing it, you listen. Instead of rushing to escape it, you ask what it's here to teach you. Maybe it's showing you that you need to stop living for approval. Maybe it's telling you that you've outgrown the cage you once called a life. Maybe it's waking you up to your own strength, the kind of strength that doesn't need applause, just truth. There's a quiet revolution that happens inside a person who chooses to rebuild. They stop blaming. They stop begging. They start creating. From the ashes of who they used to be, they begin shaping a new story. Not one built on perfection, one built on honesty. They ask, what do I really value? What do I truly want? Who am I when no one is watching? And slowly, a new self begins to take shape. Not one crafted by fear, but by freedom. Not one glued together by image, but rooted in purpose. You don't rebuild identity by snapping back into old habits. You rebuild by choosing new ones. You speak differently. You walk differently. You forgive differently. You love differently. Not because the world changed, but because you did. So if you feel like you lost yourself, maybe you're finally in a position to find yourself. Not the version you inherited, the one you choose, the one you become when you stop running from the pain and start rising from it. The truth is, your pain has been trying to introduce you to your real self. The one that isn't afraid to start over. The one that doesn't need to pretend. The one that can face the unknown and still move forward. So don't rush this part. Don't skip over the rebuilding. Sit with it. Feel it. Let it shape you. Because who you become after the fall is often someone you never imagined and someone the world deeply needs. If there's one truth Viktor Frankl gave to the world that still echoes across generations, it's this. Suffering is not what breaks us. Meaninglessness is. A person can survive almost any pain if they believe there's a reason for it. But the moment they feel that their suffering is empty, pointless, forgotten by the world, that's when the soul begins to collapse. Frankl saw this firsthand. In the concentration camps, the people who gave up hope didn't always die from hunger or disease. They died when they lost their why. The moment they stopped believing there was something on the other side of their suffering, they began to fade. That's why meaning is not just a nice idea. It's not a poetic concept. It's a form of survival. And it's not only for extreme situations. Even in everyday life, we carry invisible wounds, quiet despair, silent disappointments. The things we don't talk about because we think they're too small to matter. But they eat away at us all the same. Meaning is what gives those wounds context, purpose, direction. It doesn't erase the pain, but it anchors it. Frankl's therapy, logotherapy, was based on this exact principle, that the deepest human need is not pleasure, it's not power, it's meaning. A reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to endure, a reason to become. And that meaning doesn't have to be huge. It can come from small moments, a conversation, a decision, a memory, a dream, a person you refuse to give up on, a message you feel called to share, a part of you that says, I still have more to give. Fyodor Dostoevsky once wrote, the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. That something might change over time, but when you find it, when you choose it, it becomes your North Star. Even your pain can carry meaning, especially your pain. There are people walking the earth right now who've taken the worst thing that ever happened to them and turned it into their life's mission. A mother who lost her child and now helps others grieve. A man who survived addiction and now guides others to freedom. A woman who went through abuse and now teaches self-worth to thousands. These people didn't choose their suffering, but they chose what to do with it. They asked, "What now?" instead of "Why me?" And in that shift, they found their power. Your story is not over. Your pain does not disqualify you. In fact, it may be the very thing that equips you to serve, to speak, to lead, to love with more depth than ever before. You don't need to wait for perfect conditions. You don't need to wait to be healed completely. You just need to look at the mess and ask, what message is buried in here? Meaning isn't always obvious. Sometimes you have to dig for it. You have to be patient. You have to stay open. But if you keep searching, if you keep listening, it will show up. So pause for a moment. Ask yourself quietly, what's the meaning inside my suffering? What is life trying to show me? What truth am I now strong enough to carry? Because once you find that meaning, even the heaviest pain starts to become something else, not lighter, but worth it. That's the miracle of meaning. It turns wounds into wisdom. It turns endings into beginnings. It turns survival into purpose. So here we are, back at the beginning. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. You've heard these words before, but now, maybe, you feel them. This is not just a quote, it's a mirror. It shows you who you are when everything else is stripped away, when the job is gone, when the relationship ends, when the plan fails, when the storm doesn't pass. It's in that moment that life looks you in the eye and asks the most important question of all. Now what? You could get bitter. You could blame the world. You could shut down, numb out, give up, and no one would blame you. But you could also do something else. You could change, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way forward. You could become the kind of person who doesn't need perfect conditions to grow. You could stop waiting for closure and start writing the next chapter yourself. You could take everything you've lost and use it to build something even more real. Albert Camus wrote, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." That's what you've been searching for. Not certainty, not control, not comfort, but courage. The courage to rise when there's no applause. The courage to heal without revenge. The courage to transform, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. This journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be small, before fear taught you to shrink, before pain told you to hide. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not your worst day or your biggest failure or the love you didn't receive. You are the one who survived it all. And now you get to decide what that survival means. So ask yourself, who do I need to become now? What's the strength hidden inside this struggle? What kind of life could I build? Not if the world changes, but if I do. You don't have to have it all figured out today. You just need to take one honest step inward, forward, home. Because the greatest power you'll ever find is already inside you. And once you discover it, the world may still be the same, but you won't be. Your pain might not end, but it will no longer define you. Your circumstances may not change, but your response will become your revolution. So if this video spoke to something deep inside you, don't just click away. Sit with it. Reflect. Ask the questions. And if you're ready to walk this path, you're not alone. Leave a comment. Share your story. You never know who you might inspire. Because this isn't just about watching a video. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive life, but transforms through it. You may not be able to change your situation, but you can change yourself. And that, my friend, will change everything.